Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're not just looking at a dry history of money. No, we are stepping right into a deeply precarious, living world, Imperial China. We're going to uncover how a simple, fragile receipt of mulberry bark transformed into a world-altering instrument of state power. This is a story where geography, military desperation, and human psychology completely collide to create the very concept of fiat currency, and, as you'll see, ultimately weaponize it into a tool for catastrophic economic self-destruction. Let's dive in. So, what actually happens when money itself just becomes too heavy to carry? To really understand why paper money was invented, you have to forget about modern banks. Instead, I want you to imagine yourself as a 10th century tea merchant. You're navigating these freezing, incredibly treacherous mountain passes in Sichuan province. During this massive economic boom, carrying the actual physical wealth you needed to survive could literally break your back. I mean, what do you do when your local economy is expanding way faster than the physical weight of the cash your mules can handle? Well, here was the problem. Because high-value copper was constantly draining out of the region to foreign lands as imperial tribute, the geographically isolated Sichuan economy was forced to use heavily debased iron coins. Now, iron was abundant, sure, but its value-to-weight ratio was absolutely abysmal. Just picture this. Buying a simple card of silk or salt meant hauling hundreds of pounds of iron. Everyday commerce wasn't just trade anymore. It was a grueling logistical nightmare. You literally needed heavy wagons, exhausted beasts of burden, and armed mercenaries just to buy basic inventory. Crazy, right? And that brings us to Act 1, the Crucible of Commerce. See, this financial revolution wasn't some top-down decree from an emperor sitting on a throne. Not at all. It was a grassroots, bottom-up innovation driven by desperate merchants who were just trying to survive in a high-friction economy. You can actually trace this fragile evolution of human trust. Back in the 8th century, the Tang dynasty introduced flying cash, these lightweight tax receipts that, funnily enough, tended to literally blow away in the wind. But they allowed merchants to deposit heavy coins in one city and redeem them in another. The real breakthrough, though, happened around 997 CE in Chengdu when private merchants started issuing their own deposit receipts. By 1005, just to ensure these receipts held real value, 16 prominent merchant houses got together and formed a self-policing cartel. They called these handwritten notes jiaozi, literally the world's first true paper money. But keep in mind, at this stage, it was strictly representative money. It was just a receipt representing a physical asset, like iron coins, silk, or grain, sitting safely in a heavily guarded warehouse somewhere. It was a brilliant solution to the iron coin crisis. It completely transformed local commerce through this tightly knit network of merchant trust, where if you defaulted, it meant absolute social and economic ruin. But of course, things shift. Act 2. The state seizes control. The thing is, private trust has its limits. When merchant hubris and speculation eventually led to insolvencies, the public totally panicked. So, the Song government swooped in and nationalized the whole system in 1023. They started using remarkable artifacts, like early Song dynasty printing plates, to mass-produce a new official state currency. And honestly, initially, the state operated with ironclad discipline. They backed this new paper with a massive reserve of 360,000 strings of cash coins. That metallic anchor guaranteed absolute public confidence. To support this insanely ambitious national project, the Song dynasty essentially built a massive industrial complex. They harvested and violently pulped the resilient inner bark of mulberry trees. Master artisans carved highly complex, standardized woodblocks. They applied this advanced multicolor ink registration, black, red, blue, and stamped them with these vivid vermilion imperial seals. We're talking over 1,000 workers laboring daily in Hangzhou's humming factories, all just to manifest this sophisticated paper asset into reality. Centuries before Europe even entertained the idea of paper money, the Chinese state was protecting the fragility of fiat currency using bleeding-edge tech and, frankly, brutal legal consequences. I mean, look at these anti-counterfeiting measures. 6-color printing, unique regional fiber mixes baked right into the paper itself, designs that expired and completely rotated every 3 years. And the legal code? Simple and terrifying. Immediate execution for forgers. The entire system was meticulously designed to force trust through pure fear. Which leads us directly to Act 3, the hubris of empire. Because the ultimate test of this system didn't come from counterfeiters. It came from the terrifying reality of war. When the Jurchens captured the northern capital in 1127, the Song court had to flee south. Faced with astronomical defense expenditures to fight off these invaders and entirely cut off from their traditional copper and silver mines, the government finally yielded to the ultimate temptation. They broke the metallic standard. They realized in a moment of pure desperation that they could fund armies out of thin air just by weaponizing the printing press. 329 million. By the year 1231, the circulation of the new Southern Song paper notes, called huizi, had exploded to a staggering 329 million guan. It was just this desperate flood of paper, printed frantically to pay shivering soldiers and try to maintain crumbling supply chains, all while the Mongols were starting to press down hard on their borders. And the consequences of that desperation? Absolutely brutal. In just a 50-year span between 1190 and 1240, the state artificially multiplied the money supply sixfold. They completely abandoned the discipline of that 360,000 coin reserve that had made the whole system work flawlessly a century prior. And here is the devastating human cost. As the money supply grew sixfold, the price of everyday survival goods, like rice, skyrocketed 20-fold. This is the absolute hallmark of hyperinflation. Decades of hard-earned public trust just evaporated overnight. Starving citizens hoarded whatever scrap of metal they could find. Merchants outright refused to accept the paper. The economic backbone of the Song dynasty snapped, leaving them completely defenseless against the inevitable Mongol conquest. Leaving behind, quite literally, a fragile legacy of trust. You'd think the collapse of the Song dynasty would be a dire warning, right? But power is a really difficult thing to relinquish. The succeeding Mongol Khans of the Yuan dynasty, which is the exact same empire Marco Polo visited, marveled at this paper money, yet they proved even more inept at managing it. They repeatedly overprinted to fund their massive wars, plunging the populace right back into hyperinflation. The Ming dynasty tried next, literally printing notes with explicit death threats right on the bill. But they too used the press to cover massive state deficits and, predictably, their system collapsed just the same. Which brings us to an absolutely stunning historical irony, the Great Reversal. In the 15th century, after multiple dynastic collapses completely driven by hyperinflation, the Ming dynasty threw their hands up and banned paper currency outright. The very civilization that invented this economic superpower abandoned it completely. They returned to the heavy, restrictive safety of a silver standard precisely at the moment a bewildered Europe was finally beginning to experiment with private paper banknotes of their own. Talk about ships passing in the night. The cultural anxiety of this whole era is perfectly captured by a Southern Song poet named Yang Wan Li. Back in 1192, he called paper the son to metal coins' mother. It's a gorgeous metaphor, isn't it? It beautifully describes the eternal war we still face today, the constant conflict between the weightless, incredible convenience of paper credit and the heavy, undeniable, intrinsic truth of metal. You just can't have the son without the mother keeping him grounded. So as we wrap up this explainer, we're really left with a lingering thought. If the most technologically advanced and autocratic empires of the ancient world couldn't resist the temptation of the printing press, is our modern global economy really a perfected science? Or is it just the latest, highly digitized chapter in a fragile, millennium-old experiment in human trust? Just something to keep in mind the next time you tap your card.